Hey, good morning. It's Friday, December 18th. Again, thank you for being here this morning. A little more natural sunlight coming in from the Everyday Talk 24 by 7 studios. Well, actually, my living room, but I thought I'd throw that in. We're going to talk about Joseph this morning. In Luke's gospel, and since I'm primarily relying with him for this account of the narrative, he picks up the narrative about Joseph simply by saying, after the time for the census, his next line is, so when it's time for a census, Joseph went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Bethlehem, to the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David, and he went up with Mary to register. They're married, she's with child, not a problem. Well, from the perspective of Luke talking to an outsider, to a Greek Theophilus, that's okay. But from a Jewish perspective, these people are going to need some more help. So Matthew fills that in for us. It's interesting the perspective that Matthew has. He starts with Joseph, and through the Holy Spirit's wisdom leaves the story of Mary to Luke. So this is how Matthew says what says happened with the birth of Christ. This is how the birth of Christ came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be with child through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her privately and quietly. But after he considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. See, the Jews needed to be brought on board here, because Mary had, in their perspective, without any outside information, had committed a crime of adultery. Joseph had grounds for divorce. See, in that culture, being betrothed, even though they weren't formally living together as man and wife, meant that you were serious. It was the same issue. So if you got our idea of engagement, their idea of betrothal is very, very different ideas, because when you are pledged in that way, it's as if you are married. In our culture, we view engagement a little bit more differently, a little more fluidly, which is why I think premarital counseling, pre-engagement counseling, that is, before you get engaged, is not a bad idea. Anyway, different subject. So we know that Mary was righteous, but this passage also tells us that Joseph was a righteous and good man, and he wanted to handle things well. We can't make the mistake of thinking that reading our culture back into that one, where, Joseph and Mary are seeing each other every other day or regular basis. They went out and saw a movie. They got a bite to eat, and on the way home, Mary just happens to say to Joseph, by the way, I'm pregnant by the Holy Spirit, but it's okay. It didn't happen that way. It's quite possible they had very little social contact. It's quite possible that when Joseph found out that Mary was pregnant, he had no idea why she was and how this came about. Indeed, that's what the angel intimates. So instead of being in a righteous rage, he wants to care for her. So we see he has a tender heart for Mary, because in that culture, it's very different than where we are. They took sexual sin very seriously, not because it made you a bad, ugly person, but because it was an affront to the way that God designed things. So Joseph has already shown himself to be a good, righteous, kind man. And then the Holy Spirit comes to him through an angel in a dream and gives him reason to be rejoicing in his wife. That no, this is not a shameful thing. That no, Mary has not been unfaithful. Instead, God is about to bless both of them with the most unimaginable gift. You see, there's a lesson to be learned here. We learn that Joseph is a good man. We learn that Mary is a good woman in the right sense. And God responds to them. But we also see that we can't judge things by appearances. Joseph didn't jump to conclusions. Joseph acted graciously. And God responded to that. So we could go on and on and on with illustrations about this. But don't judge things quickly. Trust God. Engage in the fruit of the Spirit, in love and joy and peace and patience, and goodness and faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, which that's exactly what Joseph did. And he was incredibly blessed by God by that faithfulness. Let that be a model for us this day. So Joseph, he actually was a pretty good guy. And, we'll continue with the story tonight. Again, love your feedback. Have a great day and the Lord bless you.